All right, so advancing on to some more sophisticated techniques for creating materials. I first want to show you how you can create your own texture and then apply what's called a normal map to it to give our texture some depth, well, texture. What we've used before is just creating a flat color. Uh, well, I say flat, texture-wise, flat. We've added some shininess to it, but it's been smooth, right? It's been something where we look at it and it's not going to feel rough to our skin if we imagine trying to touch that material. I want to change that. I want to create a concrete. So if we think about concrete, it's kind of smooth, but it's got some roughness to it, right? And so we'll see some shadows and pits and things like that. So to create this, where I'm going to go first is GIMP, the new image manipulation program. This is something free that you can get. It does 95% of what Photoshop does, which means it does 99% of what most people really need an image editor to do. And did I mention that it's free? This is the best part. You can do this with Photoshop as well, of course, if you have Photoshop. But what we're going to do to create a texture is first go to New. We're going to create a new file, and we're going to create our image size to be square. Now, there's depending on how detailed you want your texture, you can make this really huge, or it's not going to have a whole lot of detail to it. You can make it really tiny. But we're going to make this 2048 by 2048. Typically, a dimension that is some power of 2 works really well. So 512, 1024, 2048, 4096 would be the next one up. But this will give us a large enough texture to give us some detail without being huge and just blowing our memory usage out of the water. So 2K by 2K, click OK. And we get now a uniform white square. Now our concrete isn't white. It's going to be a gray, right? Usually a lightish gray. So what I'm going to do here is I'll show you where that was. Right here, I'm going to click on the black box. That's my foreground color. And I'm going to select a kind of lightish gray here. You can do it through the color picker here, just by sight, or you can also come here and edit the RGB components directly. So now we can see here I've got a light gray selected for my color. Next, I want to fill the entire square with this color. And so I'll come to, where is it? Looks like an upended paint bucket. Here it is, right here. So my paint bucket tool, this will fill an entire region. Now you can fill just part of a region based on color, based on selection, however you choose. We are going to just fill the whole darn thing. So I'm just going to, in its default, I'm just going to click here. Boom, there it is. Now it's all gray. But concrete isn't flat, right? It has texture, it has depth. Some bits are darker and some bits are lighter. So instead of trying to edit this on our own, the bits that are light and dark in concrete are randomly distributed. So I'm going to add random noise, and that should look pretty good. So under filters here, I'm going to go down to noise, and In Photoshop, there's a way to add what's called luminance noise or grayscale noise. We don't want to change the color of this. We just want to change the luminance, how white or black it is. We don't want a whole bunch of red and green and blue speckles. That's kind of not what we're going for. So I'm going to select this first option here. And we take a look. It gives us a preview that we can see. And yeah, that doesn't look bad. So I'll select that. Okay. And now we're ready to save. Now our image, we can apply a tone to this. We can shade this to being more bluish if we want, or more yellowish. We can make this more reddish if we want more of a brick type of thing. So we can do a lot of extra things to this, but this is good right now. So I'm going to save this. But GIMP will always want to save this as its own unique file type, which doesn't import to much else. So instead of just saving this, we're going to export this. So Control E, export, or export as. And this is what I want because I want to specify the file name. Export as, and then wherever you're storing things, wherever you want to keep your images. I'm going to store this as concrete underscore albedo. In other words, this file will be our albedo file. This is our base color and appearance for our material. So I'll export that. Now, to create a file that's going to give us some idea of texture, of depth, we have to create what's called a normal map. And there's some sophisticated ways to do this. We're going to create a kind of loosey-goosey way of doing this. And we're going to start with the image that we just created. So we have our speckled, our noised up image that we just saved as our albedo. But now I really want to enhance the differences between the light bits and dark bits. So I'm going to come here to colors, and I'm going to come to level. And here we can see what the pixel values, how many pixels on the vertical axis have a certain value on the horizontal axis here. So you can see I have a lot of white pixels. I have not so many dark pixels. I'm going to change that. I'm going to grab the black arrow here, and I'm going to drag that up. Notice what that does to my picture. It really deepens those dark areas. Now I can change where the balance is, making this lighter or darker. I'm going to choose it right there in the middle. And I'm hit OK. So now I have an image that has that light and dark enhanced. I've enhanced the contrast in a manner of speaking for the lights and darks. Now in Unity, when we take this image and convert it into a normal map, it's going to think of the dark areas as being very low and the lighter areas as being high, and it's going to create a map so that it knows how to treat light that's hitting our surface. So I'm going to now export this again, export as, but instead of concrete albedo, I'm going to save this as concrete normal, because this is going to become our normal map. There. So now I've saved two files, concrete albedo, concrete normal. So now I come back to my editor, and under Assets, I've created a new folder. I've created a folder, Textures. This is where I'm going to keep all my flat 2D textures for creating materials. So there's a couple of ways about this. You can either enter your folder, then right-click and select Import New Asset. When you do that, it'll open a window where you can now go and search for your files. And I have some that I saved earlier under Game Dev, Unity Assets, Textures, Concrete. There's my concrete textures. So I can just select those from here and they'll import. I can also have this window already open, grab them both, and just drag them down here. And it'll do the same thing as I'm getting ready to do here. So I'm going to select both of these and then click Import. And there we have it. I've got my two textures. Now, under Materials, I'm going to create a new material on which I'm going to apply these two textures. So right-click, Create, Material, and now I'm going to call this Concrete. To apply our new textures to this particular material, right here next to the albedo, you see the little circle with a dot. If you click on that, it will open up all the options you can select for textures. And in here somewhere, there we go, concrete albedo. Great. And so now if we look at our texture down here, we see, oh, yeah, it looks speckled, but it still looks smooth. So let me go back to our texture folder. So we have our concrete albedo, and then I have our concrete normal. Now, in order to use this as a normal map, we have to first convert it into a normal map. So with this selected in the inspector, we have texture type. Under texture type, we can select normal map. And then we're going to create from grayscale. So we had a grayscale image that now we're going to use that light and dark values from that image to tell us how high or how low the surface is to create a textured type of material. So I'll click Create from Grayscale and then Apply. Notice now my image looks way different. It's all colored. These different colors refer to the different directions for our what's called a normal vector. Think of it as an arrow pointing perpendicular to the surface of this material. So now back to materials, back to my concrete. Here under normal map, I'm going to select normal map, and there's my concrete normal. And look, now my texture looks a lot more rough. It looks like it would actually be abrasive if we moved our hand over it. But I have to say, it looks a little too rough. So we can change this. We can change how aggressively we apply this normal map right here. So one is apply the full map, make it really extreme. If we say 0, nothing. So it's like we didn't even have it applied. So I'm going to go halfway. So that looks good. So with a setting of 0.5, now I've got what looks like a nice a nice surface. And you can play with this to get the exact type of effect that you want, whether you want polished concrete or maybe you do want something more rough. But there we go. Now we have a custom-made texturized material we can use to make more realistic objects.